Murder a Jew in the land of Israel and immediately go on salary with the Palestinian Authority. The more Jews you murder, the more money you receive. In fact, there are more than 30,000 Palestinian Arabs who are receiving blood money from their government to the tune of $1.5 billion. Where does this money come from? Good question. American tax dollars at work. I'm Luke, and this is the Israel Guys. Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, Al Jazeera Plus, not the Al Jazeera YouTube channel, the Al Jazeera Plus channel has 1.2 million subscribers. And if they have 1.2 million subscribers and we're going to give them a run for their money, then we need you to subscribe on YouTube right now. Please, guys, help us compete with the Qatar state-funded and controlled media network that absolutely hates Israel. Hit subscribe on YouTube, hit those notifications, and let us know in the comments if you are a new subscriber. And don't forget, we are now here Monday through Friday. My show comes out every Tuesday, and we're not just on YouTube. We're on Rumble, Facebook, all the social media platforms, and all podcast platforms as well. So give us a subscribe or a follow wherever you watch or listen. Guys, the bad news, and we hate to keep bringing the negative news, but 11 Jews have been killed in the land of Israel in the last 2 weeks in terrorist attacks. And I know we've been reporting on this, but after yesterday's show came out, a border police officer was stabbed in the back by a 13-year-old Arab terrorist. A 13-year-old. There's been 3 attacks in the last 2 weeks that have been committed by young teenage terrorists here. And horrifically, yes, they are children, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they're still committing acts of terror. And last night, a border police officer was stabbed by a 13-year-old and killed. He died of his wounds. So terrorist attacks that have happened in the last 2 weeks, just to give a recap of what's happening here. There was a mass shooter about little over 2 weeks ago, mass shooter who killed 7 Jews outside a synagogue in Jerusalem. And that's the worst terrorist attack Israel has seen in several decades, okay? And then there was a car ramming terrorist who managed to kill 2 brothers, 6 and 8 years old, as well as a 20-year-old man who was standing next to his wife. They'd only been married for 6 months. And even though his wife is okay, she was standing next to him and had his blood splattered all over. It's absolutely horrific. And yet, as we will get to, as you will see, the U.S. Secretary of State manages to issue an official U.S. administration statement condemning Israel for daring to authorize or regulate or legalize 9 communities that have been here for decades, and Israel's just taking steps to make them official. So Two children get killed. A man gets killed right next to his wife, and his blood is spilled all over her. And what is the U.S. Secretary of State's response? We are deeply concerned about Israel's decision to retroactively regulate settlements in the West Bank. But we're going to get to that in a minute. A 14-year-old terrorist stabbed a 20-year-old in the old city of Jerusalem. The terrorist was captured, thankfully, and the Jewish man was injured but is expected to survive. And finally, 22-year-old Israeli soldier, Staff Sergeant Asil Saweed, was stabbed in the back at a checkpoint in East Jerusalem, and he later died from his wounds. His attacker was a 13-year-old Arab terrorist who was arrested by security forces. Okay, you guys have heard all this. I'm not going to go into the details of the horrific terrorist attacks, except to say, when is enough enough? When are we going to look at the tragic photos of a 6 and 8-year-old brother? By the way, their father, who is still in a coma in the hospital and doesn't even know that his 2 boys were killed yet because he was injured in the same terrorist attack. When is that going to be enough for you? When is that enough for the international community? When is it enough for the Biden administration? When is it enough for the United Nations, for the International Criminal Court? When is it enough for the forces of evil? How many Jews have to shed their blood? How many Jews have to die in terrorist attacks for the world to say, okay, now it's enough. Now Jews can live in Judea. Now Jews can live in Samaria. Now you can actually have a Jewish community and we're not going to condemn you for it. How much is enough? I want to talk about something else, because these are your U.S. tax dollars at work. And if you're an American citizen, you should be concerned about this, and you should be actively taking steps against it, okay? The ramming attack terrorist that just happened in the last few days, okay? A ramming attack car ran over a bunch of people at a bus stop, and as I mentioned, 3 people were killed, more people were injured. The terrorist was an Israeli Arab resident from the eastern Jerusalem neighborhood of East Zawiya near Hebrew University on Mount Scopus, okay? Now, he was neutralized at the scene. He was a supporter of Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Lion's Den, the Lion's Den terrorist group that's based out of Nablus, just a couple miles from here. He had praised these terrorist factions and groups on social media in the time leading up to the attack. Okay, he ran over a bus. He rammed into a bus stop at full speed. Managed to kill 3 Jews. And here's what's going to happen. Even though he was killed, now if you kill Jews and you go to Israeli prison, you're going to receive a lot more money, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if you kill Jews and you're neutralized in the attack, then guess what? Your family is still going to get payments from the Palestinian Authority because you are now classified as a martyr, right? Now, here's what this man's family, and no, we're not going to mention his name. A murderer doesn't deserve to have his name mentioned on air, okay? Now, his family, he killed 3 Jews. His family will receive the following from the Palestinian Authority under their pay-to-slay program. A one-time payment, an immediate payment of $1,719. Now, after that, his family will get a base monthly payment of $401. Then on top of that, if he has a wife, he might have more than one wife, but if he has one wife, he'll get an extra $114 per month. If he has, he'll get $57 per month per child. And then he'll get an extra $86 per month for being a resident of Jerusalem, and another extra $86 per month for being an Israeli resident. All told, his family will begin receiving $744 per month for the rest of their lives, assuming he just has one wife and one child. If he has more, they'll get even more money than that. And that's after the down payment of almost $2,000. So this man was neutralized in the event while he was attacking Jews, managed to kill Jews. Now his family is going to go on a lifetime monthly stipend of getting nearly $1,000 every single month. Now, let's talk about the 13-year-old who stabbed and killed the staff sergeant at an Israeli checkpoint. Stabbed him in the back. A 13-year-old child, by the way. If you're not outraged at that this child abuse is happening, because where does the 13-year-old get an idea to stab an Israeli security officer? Well, he gets the ideas from maybe his parents, because his mother will celebrate the fact that he is a martyr. And that's fact, okay? Maybe from PA propaganda TV, from the school curriculum. Much of it comes from the United Nations. And everything he experiences in his culture is brainwashing him that it is an honor and a privilege to go out and be a martyr in the name of Allah, in the name of jihad, right? Now, the 13-year-old stabbed and killed an Israeli security officer at a checkpoint. Now, he didn't die, so now he's going to go to an Israeli prison. I'm not sure what happens because he's a minor, but obviously he killed an Israeli. He murdered an Israeli, so he's not going to get off scot-free. I'm not sure. Maybe he goes to a juvenile prison, right? But he probably is going to receive a lengthy sentence, maybe 30 years or more. And according to the Palestinian Authority's pay-to-slay program, this is what he and his family are going to receive: $3,438 per month as a base salary. On top of that, now he would get more if he was married and had children, so on. But since he's a minor, that he's only going to get $3,438 per month. $3,500 a month for the rest of his life, and he's 13. So even if he serves a 30-year prison sentence, a life prison sentence, he can get out when he's 43 years old and have an amazing life ahead of him. And he could have millions of dollars in the bank from receiving an incredible salary. And as soon as he does get out of prison at 43, let's say at 43 years old, he's going to automatically receive a job with the Palestinian Authority, because they prioritize terrorists that are released from Israeli prison. They prioritize them for government jobs, which is one of the only good paying jobs that the Palestinian Authority has to offer. And his family right now will automatically start receiving health care, Social Security, and other benefits from the PA. This is horrific. This is incentivizing murder amongst the Palestinian Authority. The PA pay to slay yearly budget as of 2017, I didn't find updated numbers, but as of 2017, there are 6,300 Palestinian prisoners on the PA payroll. And their 2017 budget for salary payments to prisoners was $158 million. On top of that, you have the number of martyrs and their families who are on the PA payroll. 26,700 people, in their budgets for martyrs' families, or their 2017 budget for martyrs' families, $197 million. And the PA has paid as much as $1.5 billion to terrorists and their families from 2013 to 2020. And they pay as much as $15 million every single month. Now, how does this relate to you? Especially if you're an American citizen. Believe it or not, these are your tax dollars at work, okay? The Taylor Force Act. Taylor Force was an American citizen that was killed in a 2016 in a terrorist attack here in Israel. Not in the West Bank, not in Judea and Samaria, not in East Jerusalem, but in Israel proper. He was an American citizen that he was studying or something here in Israel, and he was killed in a terrorist attack. Now, as a result of that attack in 2016, the Taylor Force Act was passed in 2018, and it's a law that was passed. That was legislation that was passed into law, and it bars U.S. government funding, U.S. government payments to the Palestinian Authority until they cease their pay-to-slay program. Basically, until they stop paying any funds to terrorists and their families. Now, you tell me. At what point in the last 5 years, at what point in the last 10 years has the Palestinian Authority ever ceased their pay-to-slay program? Maybe they stopped after this was passed into law? Nope, not at all. Maybe they stopped when President Trump stopped funding to the Palestinian Authority in accordance with U.S. law? Nope, not even for a week, not even for a month, not even for a year. The Palestinian Authority has never stopped their pay-to-slay program, even when they run into budget crises. Because when President Trump, he in accordance with the Taylor Force Act, he stopped funding the Palestinian Authority with U.S. funds. Then the PA had a budget crisis. And instead of stopping payments to terrorists and their families, they just cut salaries to, government and workers, or they froze their monthly salaries for months on end. Because they said, number one priority, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, the illegal chairman of the Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen, he said their number one priority is to pay terrorists, to pay martyrs, to pay their families. Nothing else matters, even if they have to cease payments to the rest of their government employees. So the Taylor Force Act passed in 2018. President Trump stopped funding to the Palestinian Authority because they wouldn't stop paying terrorists in accordance with U.S. law. And guess what? President Joe Biden came into office, and what do you think he did? Yep. He started paying the Palestinian Authority again. Now, they started passing it through back channels, and they claim that all the U.S. funding currently goes through a Palestinian Economic Support Program, which supposedly only funds non-government groups. But there's a group that is currently suing the Biden administration over their alleged violation of the Taylor Force Act. And they claim that all of this is simply the U.S. government's attempts to skirt U.S. law. So, to recap, the Palestinian Authority has paid more than $1.5 billion in the last 10 years to terrorists and their families. There is a U.S. law that prohibits U.S. funding from going to the Palestinian Authority until they stop their pay-to-slay program. And the Biden administration is currently sending funds to the Palestinians in violation of U.S. law. And if you are an American citizen, that should concern you. And maybe you should pick up the phone and call your senator and congressman and give them a piece of your mind. We need you to come to the land of Israel to play your part in bringing Israel's forests back to life. April 17th through May 1st, we have a team of volunteers joining us in Israel for one mission: to plant trees in Judea and Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland. For 2,000 years, this area of Israel has lain desolate and barren, and even though groups have planted trees in the rest of Israel over the last 100 years, Judea and Samaria have been neglected due to the political sensitivities. no more. Our mission is to plant 20,000 trees in the biblical heartland this year, and this 2-week volunteer trip will play a huge role in that. Join us for a hardworking, unforgettable volunteer experience in Israel's heartland this spring. You may be surprised at how much a trip like this can change your life. To find out more, go to serveisrael.com/volunteer or click the link in the description below. Don't wait, because time is running out to sign up. If you love God, Israel, and are ready for a hard-working adventure in the land of Israel, sign up for our tree planting volunteer program at serveisrael.com/volunteer or click the link below. After all of this, after the horrific attacks in the last 2 weeks, after 11 Israelis have been murdered in the last 2.5 weeks, what has Israel done? Now, obviously, they're tightening down security. They're trying to put down the violence and stop terrorism that's happening. But another thing they did is they said, we're going to retroactively legalize or authorize 9 settlements, Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. And maybe this is as a response to this wave of terror. Maybe this is their way of saying, terror does not scare us, and we will never give in to terrorism. And so we're going to push forward Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria. Now, we're talking about 9 Jewish communities that have been around for years. Some of them have been around for decades. I know where some of these are. And it's basically, it's just like a legal, it's not even like, nothing is actually actively going to change on the ground. It's just the government is putting their stamp of approval on a Jewish community, right? And what is the U.S.'s response? The U.S. doesn't have, they don't respond with an official statement of condemning Palestinian terrorism and violence, or standing with Israel, with the Israeli security officer that was killed yesterday. Nope, they put out an official statement. Anthony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, puts out an official statement, and he says, quote, "We are deeply troubled by Israel's decision yesterday to advance reportedly nearly 10,000 settlement units and to begin a process to retroactively legalize 9 outposts in the West Bank that were previously illegal under Israeli law." Now, that's another thing. Bezalel Smotrich is working on a plan to put forward put forward a plan to build 10,000 new units in Judea and Samaria. So that's what he's talking about there. But then he's talking about 9 outposts. They're not outposts. These are towns. These are Jewish towns in Judea and Samaria, some of which have been around for decades. And he says they're previously illegal under Israeli law. Now, like if you're an American citizen and a foreign country put out an official statement and says, we are worried about that an American decision to put their stamp of approval on a small town in the Midwest. Who cares what the U.S. wants to do with a town in the Midwest or anything? That's your own business, right? The Israeli government is saying we're now going to retroactively approve 9 communities in Judea and Samaria, and the American administration comes out and says we are deeply what does he say? Deeply troubled by your decision to do this. He goes on to say, quote, "Like previous administrations, Democrat and Republican, we strongly oppose such unilateral measures which exacerbate tensions and undermine the prospects for a negotiated 2-state solution." So, no words about condemning terrorism, no words about how the Palestinians should just stop trying to kill Jews, but a lengthy statements. Let's read a little bit more. Quote, "As I have previously stated, anything that takes us away from the vision of 2 states for 2 people is detrimental to Israel's long-term security, its identity as a Jewish and democratic state, and to our vision of equal measures of security, freedom, prosperity, and dignity for Israelis and Palestinians alike. We call on all parties to avoid additional actions that can further escalate tensions in the region and to take practical steps that can improve the well-being of the Palestinian people." Again, 11 Israelis are murdered in the land of Israel, and the only response that the U.S. Secretary of State can put out is an official statement about how we need to have all this freedom, dignity, prosperity for Israelis and Palestinians alike. We don't care that it's just the Palestinians that are trying to kill Jews. Nope. All we care about is the vision for a 2-state solution. Who cares if that 2-state solution would involve the Palestinians basically shooting rockets into Israel and trying to murder more and more Jews, and it would be absolute suicide for the state of Israel. Nope, that's all we care about. Two-state solution. He calls it detrimental. Words like vision of equal measures of security, freedom, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Secretary of State, 11 Israeli Jews were murdered by Palestinian extremists in the last 2 weeks. And all you can talk about is the fact that the Israeli government is going to retroactively approve Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. It's completely insensitive, unfeeling, and detached from reality of what is happening here on the ground. Guys, if you're a U.S. citizen, you should be outraged. You should be asking 2 questions. 1, how much Jewish blood is enough for the world to actually approve of Jews living in any part of the state of Israel? And no, it's not just about Jews living in Judea and Samaria or East Jerusalem or West Jerusalem. It's about Jews having the right to live and to thrive in any part of the land of Israel. How much Jewish blood is enough? That should be question number 1. Question number 2, why is the U.S. sending millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars to the Palestinians when they're spending billions paying murderers and terrorists and their families every single year? If you're a U.S. citizen, call your state representatives and tell them you're not okay with U.S. tax dollars going to support the murderous Palestinian Authority regime, and tell them it's against U.S. law. Cite the Taylor Force Act passed in 2018. Tell them you stand with Israel and you want to see your government more strongly supporting Israel. Guys, if you want to put your boots on the ground, don't forget to check out our upcoming volunteer program. It's this April. We're planting trees and we need your help. You can put your actual fingers and feet in the soil of Israel's heartland. To find out more, go to serveisrael.com. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or listening. If we're going to catch Al Jazeera, we need you to subscribe here on YouTube. As always, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We're here every Monday through Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.